everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Long Box Sessions. I'm your host, Alex Dandino.
And I'm Josh Griffey. Yeah, I'm Josh Griffey.
In a jazzercise video, apparently.
Yeah, I thought I'd...
As always.
I'm trying to bring the mood up, right? I always come in like the stern stepfather is like, I just plowed your mom and now I'm ready to backhand you. So I thought I'd bring it back. I'd make the show more, open and light and engaging.
Yeah, you really threw the whole thing off, you know? I don't know. I don't even know what to say now. I guess
See?
pod over. Thanks
But
for
look
tuning
at how
in.
much happier you look, right? You don't look like you're in a... you don't look like you're cowering in the corner of your bedroom anymore. Now we're ready now.
It's true. I'm not quite at the emo phase I was when I was 18, but nevertheless, here we are.
Get your dashboard out.
Your
Stepdad's home.
Make sure that you check out our YouTube page, Nerd Alchemist. That's plural with an S, which I learned last night. Great.
Yes.
And then officially. And then, of course, whatever podcast platform you might use. Please rate, review, and subscribe, particularly Apple iTunes. A podcast, it helps us so much. Oh, my God, there's so much time.
Help us out. Help us out.
Ooh, that was good.
You know
that
what I
was
mean? Yeah. Oh, dude, I'm feeling it. So let's bring this down. What about this birds of prey?
No, okay, it's weird. Okay, it's weird you bring that up. I wanted to ask you a question.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the Birds of Prey movie yet.
I haven't either.
So I feel kind of bad, but I've seen a lot of articles about why Birds of Prey hasn't been successful. And of course, there are usual people who say, oh, well, it's obviously because it's a female empowerment movie or whatever. Like, again, I'm assuming these people also haven't seen it. But there's a bunch of people who claim on the internet that this is because it's a all female-led movie.
Sure.
Particularly focused on Harley Quinn.
Sure.
I think that's pure and utter bullshit. But
okay. You're doing the Democratic debate theory. You're just throwing bombs and then hiding back. You know, Mike Bloomberg, who's barely as tall as his podium.
The reason I think that's bullshit actually is because now, granted, I don't know how many people out there have DC Universe. I do. Mm-hmm. Again, that's my thing. But
oh my God, you're so
the Harley
cool.
Quinn.
Look at you.
The Harley Quinn cartoon is quite successful. It already has a season 2 that's coming out in April through DC Universe. So it seems to me that a Harley Quinn led project is in fact not a problem. I don't know. What's your theory? I have a theory. I have an idea what it is, but I have a feling you do too, because we think very similarly in this regard. Why do you think the Birds of Prey movie is not successful?
It's my superpower is to whip up a take on a drop of a dime. Which apparently a dime is about what Birds of Prey is going to make.
Lick.
I heard. Yeah, so no, I think this is an interesting discussion for us, right? Because we're two guys who love comic books, love comic book characters. I think both of us have been more into the DC EU than a lot of people, right? And why we're the guys who are supposed to be seeing this movie that didn't go, right?
Right.
What is the reason?
Well, we have children.
Well, yeah. Okay, we have children. That's true. But also, I saw Color Out of Space more than once in the movie theater, so I don't have a great... I mean, that's just a better movie, I'm assuming. If Birds of Prey came out and was like Citizen Kane, I would still like Color Out of Space more, because it's Nick Cage and aliens. But neither here nor there, right? So let's wipe the slate clean. I do think it is impossible and, guaranteed apex mountain of glibness, right, to say that there's none of that going on, right? There is a huge backlash, I think, from a lot of guys who are, the classic comic book guy who's really mad. And they don't like the whole tone of the trailer. They don't like all the ladies. And I myself read people on Twitter having the feud like, this is what happens when you take away the hotness. And I was like, if you're going to the theater and you're like, God, I just can't wait to get my clown suit Harley Quinn boner on. Like, that's a sad, weird place to live, but those guys exist.
Who's going to these movies just like fully torqued, ready to fucking just go for it?
Right? You're like, yeah, if I don't get 3.5 boners, right? Like, this drab outfitting, I'm not a fan. No. But I'm telling you for a fact, I read that. So there is
That's the entire crowd for a Black Widow movie. Right. Everyone's just going in fully torqued.
Yeah, I mean, my theory is twofold, right? Actually, I think I would list my theory in 3 bullet points, right? Okay. Which is one, Suicide Squad is the hottest of garbage. It's one of the worst movies I've ever seen. And this movie, while apparently dramatically better and has almost nothing to do with Suicide Squad, still has some of the look of Suicide Squad. So when I first saw the trailer, my immediate reaction was, ew, gross. Right? Like, not in. Like, I don't want to ever spend time in the David Ayer Suicide Squad universe again. So that was my first revulsion, right? And I really like Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn. So, but that's just my first gut reaction. 2, I think there is a bit of a backlash from the other side of the argument, which is I think some people were really turned off by Joker and the amount of wild success and praise Joker got, and this was their chance to say, I don't like, this, kind of small-minded look at mental illness and abuse and this and that. And thirdly, I think my third point, which I think is probably a little bit less, but probable, or not probable, possible, is that I think maybe there's just a burnout, right? That in a post-Avengers Endgame world, it's going to be harder to draw people to the theater. Like, once we're all the way up there, when you watch the end of Endgame, right? And I wasn't a wildly huge fan of that movie, but it's undeniably pulling out all of its cards, right? Like, this is, you've never seen this before, and you'll never see it again, probably.
Totally.
So I think some mixture, but then the argument would be Joker did well after that. But okay, so we had our one, and I think people are kind of conflating these 3 reasons, I would say, or probably more why more people like us haven't gone to see it than the whole. I don't know that it's the main driver is that it's a female-driven cast, because I want to see it. I just, for some reason, I haven't felt the urge to go.
Right.
What is your take? What do you think about any of those points, or what are your thoughts on it?
I actually would take your first and third point and make them my only twofold argument. I feel like while the Joker argument makes sense, I feel like it's almost, the spite is almost too motivational, almost.
Right.
Like, for all of the big fats that went into the theater to watch Joker, I cannot imagine.
Hey, as a Midwestern and fellow big fat, how dare you?
Speaking of my own, man. But, I mean, I can't imagine anyone not going to see this movie out of spite. Like, be like, I'm sticking it to the man.
Well, no, I mean, this is the thing. I've gotten to a weight and an age where I do determine where I watch movies based on reclining seats. So, yeah,
hey,
the bottom is falling out on society. It happens.
But I do think the stink of Suicide Squad is pretty rank. Like, that to me is probably the most prevalent of all issues, is that the Suicide Squadness overall is what really, like, kind of craters the whole thing for me. Like, even though I love Margot Robbie and I think she's a wonderful actress, not only that, I think she's an awesome Harley Quinn.
Yeah.
I do not want to go see another Ayer Suicide Squad universe movie. I just don't.
Right, and I'm assuming that this movie doesn't play very much like that one. The thing I'll be interested to see when I inevitably watch it is, why keep that visual aesthetic? And again, this is not the women are not hot enough. It's just, it makes me think of Suicide Squad, it makes me think of Jared Leto's Joker, and I have a visceral recoiling to that.
Right. I think to your third point, and this is going to be a problem too, by the way, for every superhero movie to come from 2020 on, which is, I mean, this was a problem when we saw Spider-Man Far From Home, which is like, I just watched Endgame. I watched the superhero movie of superhero movies. Why do I care to watch any other superhero movie at this point? Like, because you're right. Look, Endgame had flaws and all, was the spectacle of a millennia. Like, that was amazing to see on screen.
We are both on record as not wildly in love with all the way Marvel makes their movies, but that's the movie that if you had told us at like 10 years old, you'll get to see that, I mean, our heads would have fucking exploded. Like, it's undeniable what they accomplished.
I am a huge fan, and I want all Marvel movies to be awesome. Granted, I'm not a huge fan of the formula, but in a post-Endgame world, you've got to electrify me a little more than Birds of Prey. Birds of Prey is not a book I grab regardless. Like, I really enjoy, like, Babs Tarr's Batgirl and Black Canary stuff. Like, she does a great, like, those pieces of work are really fun to read. But if I'm going to go and spend my ducats at the theater, that's just not what's going to get me jiving, man. Like, I'm not going to jump out of my seat for that kind of thing.
Well, this is the weird thing, too, is because you could argue that the Joker is the exact inverse of Endgame, right? It's so small
totally.
and laser focused, and it's so trying to tell you this is just a small character study. Like, you'll just sit with this man, and it's the classic Joker line, right? Like, we're all the one bad day away. Now, that movie, again, I think Todd Phillips handles it a bit childishly, like the whole, devolving into what happens. But that's what the movie's selling you. And is the moment you see Joaquin Phoenix start doing his thing, you're just like, holy shit. And that's where this happens, right? And we're not litigating Harley Quinn, and now they've tried to change the name and put Harley Quinn more at the fore. All that's fine, right?
Right.
What we're litigating is not which movie's better or is the movie good at all.
Not at all.
What is getting you to the theater, right? Because, again, I was more excited going into Joker than when I left, right? But why am I not going to this? And to me, honestly, I thought the trailers were pretty solid. They had good energy. This and that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it was the twofold of just it felt like a movie I could wait for. And I think that's why I ranked them as I did, right? Is it looked gross like Suicide Squad, which I hate. Secondly, it just felt a little more it felt kind of Marvel formula to me. Like, we're going to do more tongue-in-cheek. Like, we're going to have some, some yucks. And they do like the Deadpool scene, throw the dynamite out.
Right.
I wasn't as interested in that as I am watching a more serious look at, the Joker. And I realize Harley Quinn, they're kind of going to this more Deadpool place with her, which she easily inhabits, right? But to me, I was just like, I can wait on that. But it's fucking strange because for this show, for now multiple years, we've seen pretty much every comic book movie the weekend it comes out and covered it. Granted, again, you're having a kid and my having a kid and being separate time zones makes this harder. But if this was the new Avengers movie, I feel like we would have been there.
Oh, yeah. I mean, for Endgame, by the way, we had brought the kid home already. I knew we needed to do the pod. I literally... Andrea and I want to set the scene. Andrea and I are raising our literally 5-day-old baby. The baby came the weekend of Endgame. We took the kid home. Andrea and I had like family here and everything. We literally tagged each other out going to the movie theater to watch the movie. Yeah. Like, we started at noon and ended at 7 p.m. when Andrea came home. And then we potted. Like, that's like the whole thing.
Right.
And honestly, like that's the life I live now. Is like, how do I divide my time and how do I decide what I want to go see in the theater?
Right. And I'm always chiseling you towards horror movies, and it's hard. And this is the problem: is there's so many things out.
But horror movies end up being better half the time.
The comic book movie has lived for a long time now, right? The comic book movie has lived in. It's the first time we're seeing them, or here's the big spectacle, right? Right. We've already seen Margot Robbie as Harley, right? In this one, it just felt like, I'm like, what's the next thing? And again, I'm assuming I will guaranteed watch it the moment it hits one of my streaming apps. I'm 100%. Assuming I will love it based on everything I've heard. I'm just trying to explain that I didn't skip it because I was afraid of a drought of boners or that women were getting better paydays. Like, that's not a thing that ever crossed my mind.
Let it be clear, the Long Box Sessions does not go to comic book movies, particularly female-led comic book movies, for bonerlicious action.
That's
what
right.
We do is we go see comic book movies.
I get boners like an adult, hiding in my closet, back against the door so my kids can't break in, watching anime. Wait, sorry, what was I saying? No, move on.
Yeah, come on. I get boners like an adult in the guest bathroom downstairs. Yeah. Oh, God, sorry. Damn it. We got to move on. Why do we move on? Yes.
I don't know. I mean, this is something that the comic book world is going to have to reckon with, right? So let's see. Black Panther 2, that'll be an instantly huge draw. Doctor Strange 2, I don't know. I mean, a bad trailer might throw that down. I'm assuming Black Widow is going to spin its wheels a little bit compared to other Marvel movies because she's dead and can never come back. What's the point?
Yeah.
So I'm interested to see now that we've seen the, hey, man, there's nothing left in the bag, right? We have to reset. Right. And I think all comic book movies will fall in line with this.
I'm interested to see the Doctor Strange movie because this is the first time, by the way, that it's been so dependent. Like they're saying, like a lot of it depends on this WandaVision show. So now we have homework before we go in and see the movie. That's a tall order.
If you're
in some
asking
cases,
me
man.
if I'm not going to be able to enjoy your movie fully because I don't watch the homework, those are movies I will skip. And I'm assuming this is not going to be how this. I'm assuming it'll be Easter eggs that those of us that don't want to watch all this other stuff will miss. You know what I mean? But that's what I mean.
Yeah,
Something like WandaVision, that seems like a really interesting next place and direction to go with those characters. And I wanted what I would have liked to have seen out of a Birds of Prey trailer that maybe would have gotten me to the theater immediately. I wanted to see, like, all right, get rid of all the fucking stink, right? The trailer essentially starts with her murdering the Joker. All right, murder that whole fucking universe and then come back with a new visual aesthetic, right? Like, give me a whole new palette. And again, I don't care what Harley's wearing. I don't care what any other character's wearing. Just don't make it look like they're the people the juggalos don't even want to hang out with.
Right.
That whole universe, that whole David Ayer look of Suicide Squad, gross. Not a fan.
Doesn't do it for me.
But I don't know. It's an interesting debate because I thought it'd be fun for us because we should have been there, and
Absolutely.
we're not worried about hotness or women getting their leading roles, and we still didn't go. I wonder if this is going to carry on to the next handful of superhero movies.
Time will tell.
Yeah.
That is for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
I usually have a book that I've read during the week, by the way, that I like to talk about. Here's the thing. I didn't read a comic book this week. I mean, probably read something like offshoot, and I'm not thinking about it. But my parents sent me a book. My parents sent me a book called Write It Down, Make It Happen, which is this like sort of, it's not The Secret, but it's pretty much secret. It's a self-help book.
Right.
It's like a, it's a self-actualization type thing. It's,
Sure.
It's supposed to motivate you to get your ass off the couch and do something, like get something going. My parents are not saying I'm lazy, but they also have seen me be depressed and they're just being good parents. But
yeah, that's good parenting.
Nevertheless, it is like they are very, that's very nice of them. I love you, Mom and Dad. Thank you very much. But I got it and I was flipping through it and I'm reading it. And again, I'm still reading like every once in a while, like issues of comics.
Yeah.
And it started to sort of meld together and I was reading through it and I realized my question became, what if a superhero wrote like, what kind of self-help do what kind of self-help do superheroes read actually? Because I'm a nobody and I'm reading this. Do you think superheroes are like sitting there like in their underwear? Like I think about that Alex Ross photo of that Alex Ross painting of Superman just like sitting after like a long day and his like his like man belly is kind of like poking out a little bit and he's just like, what the fuck?
The Alex Ross special.
Yeah. I'm like, did that guy pick up The Secret and like then he just like started going for it? Like what's the deal here?
The thought of Superman not saving a village in like Malaysia because he's reading The Secret makes me as disgusted as a David Ayers visual palette. Furiously angry that you brought that into my mind. No. I think it's interesting because I think I only own maybe one self-help book. I have
this is the only one I have.
I don't have a lot of self-help, like I have like screenwriting books, things to like help make me better at things.
Those don't count.
The closest thing I have is there's this book called The War of Art. And it's all about how fucking brutal it is to undertake any artistic endeavor. And to just like, it's a stick-to-itiveness book, right? Like, hey, man, it's okay. Like, be fine. Someday you'll make something, it'll be someone's favorite thing. And then I was like, wow, book, now you're making me feel way worse about myself. Thanks. My biggest question was self-help, right? See, I don't think superheroes would read it, but I could see them writing it. Because my biggest question I always have with self-help, right?
Interesting.
Is like, who the fuck are you? Like I saw, I actually owned the Marie Kondo book, right? Like, how to throw shit away. I had the book like years before the show came out because I'm a book hoarder and it just happened to like cross my path when I was on a tear one day. And I just was reading that book and I was like, who the fuck are you to come in my house and tell me to throw all my shit away?
About hoarding.
Perfect. Yeah. Me having that book is exceptionally proving the point that it does not work at all, right? But it pisses me off. It's like, who the fuck do you think you are, right? And like Tiger
Right.
Mom, I'm like, all right, is your kid like the president or the emperor of the galaxy? Oh no, he's just another fucking lawyer. Like, okay, so you're not like the coolest Tiger Mom. Like, I always like Tony Robbins' ability is I'm a motivational speaker. And it's like, all right, but if you take away the millions of dollars he's bilked from unsuccessful people, is Tony Robbins still successful? I don't know. But the self-help genre itself, if you took these people out, right? Like, who wrote that book that you fucking read, right? Have they ever done anything in life besides write that book?
Actually, the only other thing they've done is, and I'm not kidding, written other self-help books as promoted on the front of this book.
That's what I mean, right? Like, they're just knocking these books out. But it's like, okay, so you've aspired to be a self-help writer, and you're doing that. What qualifies you to help me? Like, yeah, I just want to be a neurosurgeon, but I'm not smart, right? Like, your book can't fix that for me. But if you told me, hey, man, there are superheroes, right? And they're going to share their, like, you know, as soon as I know that you fucking thrown knuckles at Galactus, right? Or, like, imagine, like, hey, I'm Wolverine. I was at that whole Infinity Gauntlet ordeal, but all I've got are these little pig stickers. I'd be like, wow, that's like a traumatic brain space. I'd like to know how you deal with that crushing sense of uselessness. You know what I mean? So, like, superheroes writing self-help books, I think at least offers an interesting lens. You know what I mean?
That's good. Yeah, absolutely. I like that. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. My issue with self-help has always been that George Carlin bit where he's talking about self-help books, and he's like, first off, let's get this out of the way. If you wrote a book and you helped yourself, that's not called self-help. That's help.
If someone else wrote it, they're helping you.
Someone else wrote it, and they're helping you. If you didn't need help, you wouldn't have needed it in the first place.
And let me go on record, too. I'm not anti-self-help book. But I do think they come at you with this real fucking, like, it is like the stepfather. Again, I'm really on that today. I don't know why. But, like, hey, this is my house, and we're going to adjust the rules. And it's like, hey, pal, my mom used to be laying with another man who we did it this way for a long time. Like, you're not coming in and doing this. So I'm not against self-help, right? Because my theory is in life is do anything that helps you get through the day or the world a little better. That doesn't hurt anyone. Do that, right? So I'm down. If self-help books are your jam, I'm not trying to just shit on you right now.
Not at all. Like, hey, we have friends who do a self-help book podcast. Go help yourself, guys.
Go help yourself podcast, rate and review, just like us.
They're wonderful. But again, it's one of those things, like, I don't know if they've actually done this book. I wonder if they have. But again, this is also an easy one for me to just like take with me because I travel for work a lot. So when I don't want to watch the 3 movies I watch on airplanes, I'll just read this book. There are 3 movies I'm willing to watch on airplanes. I won't say them on the air. I'm pretty sure.
One of them's Draft Day, and that's sad. It's sad, but also I'm not the guy that could be throwing haymakers in this arena.
Listen, if you like science fiction, you should watch Draft Day. It's a good science fiction film. I don't understand what the problem is.
I want to rake you over I wanted to stop this whole podcast and rake you over the coals for Draft Day, right? A story about the Cleveland Browns drafting well. But I'm also the guy that watched Leprechaun in Space 3 times this month. So, again, those 3, I could have watched Leprechaun in Space once and gone to see Birds of Prey. All my arguments are completely... Again, though, I would venture to say, even if Birds of Prey is amazing, I will like Leprechaun in Space more.
Totally.
All right, so self-help.
Self-help, though. We talked about this. I think we both constructed a list. 5, I believe.
Yeah, let's do it, man.
Self-help books that were written by superheroes for the common man or another hero, perhaps dealing with the same plight. Griff, what do you got? What do you got first?
All right. So my first one is from Animal Man, right?
Ooh, nice. Okay.
I think Animal Man offers a super interesting perspective to start a self-help book, right? And I think I'll call it Hungry Like the Wolf, Unleashing Your Inner Beast. Plural, with an S at the end, just like Nerd Alchemist, right? And so what he's telling you is as he's, having his jaunts through nature, as it were, right? Ooh, I'm an octopi. Right. Ooh, I'm a crab. Ooh, I'm a snake in a mating ball. You know what I mean? Oh, it's so hard because there's just snake bits everywhere. That's a good chapter, right? Like, oh, man, my lady, she's really kind of oogling these men on TV. I'm worried I'm not enough. Well, when I was at the bottom of a 60-snake sex ball, I'll give you some advice on, you know what I mean? It's like a love line, but if you could actually like talk about all kinds of weird love. When I was in a falcon that had its colloquia tied to another falcon hurtling to death, I wasn't as worried about the orgasm, but if my partner was enjoying hers. You know what I mean?
Ooh,
like
nice.
there are
good.
some deep cuts that you could do from the animal kingdom. Imagine that. There's a chat. This is a real thing I saw on a nature show, and I have actually written this in a comic book because I thought it was so fascinating. But there's this shark. I think it's called the Greenland shark, perhaps, right? But it lives up in the Arctic waters, and it never sees anyone its whole life. It lives like forever long, right? It's kind of like this zombie shark almost. But it has this little parasite, right? And they only latch onto this shark's eyes, and they slowly drain the sustenance. So after a while, the shark is completely blind, just swimming frozen and blind because this little parasite eats the eyes. But I'm like, that's its only contact with the world, is that thing eating its eyes, right? It's fucked up. But I was like, now imagine that in a self-help book.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Right?
Yeah.
There you go.
That's good.
There you go.
That's the metaphor for a self-help book about like marriage.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. By going through the animal kingdom, you soften the blow. Like,
right.
Human scum, you suck at everything. It's like, well, you think you're bad. What about the mighty dung beetle? Just like jump in across the kingdoms from insect up, right, to more noble creatures. Well, I don't know. Maybe there are no more noble creatures than insects. I don't know. But I think it's
perhaps.
You're Hungry Like the Wolf, Unlocking Your Inner Beast by Animal Man. I think that would be an instant bestseller. What do you got?
I thought about, I also went the direction of love. I was thinking about that one, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, or whatever that shit was. And I thought about probably one of the more famous comic book couples, which is Green Arrow and Black Canary.
Right.
Now, Black Canary could literally just fucking leave Green Arrow in the dust. Other than him being super rich, he fires arrows. There's not a whole lot of cool shit about him. So what I've decided was I've devised the book Men Are From Star City, Women Aren't Archers by Black Canary and Green Arrow.
Every chapter is her just dressing him down. I'm assuming like, hey, great facial hair that just screams I leave lukewarm reviews on craft breweries on Yelp. That's what Oliver Queen looks like.
It's part confessional, part relationship advice for those who are in relationships with superpowered people and the vice versa. But also, if you are in a relationship with someone where you feel the power balance is out of whack, this should be able to help you. This is a fave of like the Joker. Like this one's on his shelf at night for sure. In his constant pursuit of Batman, he's reading Green Arrow, Black Canary books.
Right.
But yeah, I think that exploring the ability to be with someone who's not nearly as powerful as you and has weird facial hair, I think is probably a noble pursuit.
Yeah.
It's much more a Black Canary book, but again, you got to have the everyman's take, which is definitely Oliver Queen.
Well, she's also coming from such a higher place, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, absolutely. What do you got?
All right, number 2, I think I'm going to go with Rogue.
Okay, nice.
I think Rogue has a lot to say in today's world where people feel very lonely and alone. So, I'm workshopping a title, but it's not a great title, right? But it's something. I need this, but right, the colon essentially would say how to reach down and touch yourself. Right?
Oof.
When you're unable to
go
touch
a number
others,
of directions.
right? But that's what I mean, because it always sounds the same, but that's not what I'm referring to, right? So, maybe it's just called, wrapped in your own arms, hugging your. Because they always have that. Self-help always is like, here's the thing, colon. Let me lay out the thesis of the book.
Do you think superheroes though would change that? Like maybe it would be like Rogue State. How to reach down and touch yourself.
You think they're Batman level branding?
Absolutely. They are definitely brand aware, okay?
No, I think it would be called Touching Myself, right?
Ooh, nice.
Finding love in a world where people can't get close to you or something like that, right? That's Touching Myself. That's what I would call it.
Finding love in isolation?
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing, right? So Rogue's whole ability is she's a person who really wants love. but can't because the moment she touches someone, she starts draining bits of them, their abilities and whatnot, to the point where she can seriously harm and injure someone.
Right.
And I think a lot of people would relate to that as like a relationship book, right? And
Absolutely.
so Rogue trying to find a way, how do I navigate this in the romantic sense? Because there are characters who could have that power, like let's say a Raven, where like I don't think that would bother her one iota, right? Like just ew, gross, don't touch me, we're cool. Like stay over there, we're all good. Right?
Yeah,
this is like Rogue's superpower is a perfect power for me. Like, that's enough of that. Let's move on. But for a person like Rogue who wants to be loved, is young, in the prime of their life, but devoid, right? Unable to experience human touch without carnage following, I think a lot of people would relate to that in this kind of tenderized dating environment, right?
Sure, absolutely.
I think you could find something there. That's what I mean. I think Rogue would become this, I think, because you hear this a lot now, that people are just like, fuck it, I'm done, right? It's kind of this new thing that hasn't really happened in many generations before, where people are just like, you know what, that whole, like, going through dating and shit, like, I'm out. I'm done. Like, it's too hard, it's too messy, it's too bad. I'm cool, man. Like, there's plenty of sensory inputs, right? Like, maybe Rogue's like, I knew it was all over when I watched Judge Dredd, and I was just jealous of Sandra Bullock and Stallone's sex helmets. And I knew it would never work for me.
That's Demolition Man.
Oh, my God. How dare I? Demolition Man. Both truly, truly amazing films.
I mean, great.
But that's
great
what I mean,
movies.
right? So maybe she talks about, in a world where we're not going to have traditional relationships, what else can we do to touch ourselves?
Nice. I like that.
That's what I would say. All right, what do you got
Good.
for number 2?
Number 2, the man god himself, Dr. Manhattan, has taken it upon himself to help us understand how he experiences the world, because he feels that maybe if we experience the world and life the same way he did, maybe we wouldn't feel so out of control all the time. So from Dr. Manhattan comes everything you ever wanted to know about the universe but didn't know to ask. Now,
directed by Woody
this
Allen.
This is a weighty tome, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
and
it is.
If I'm being completely true, this is definitely one of those show books you like have out on the coffee table. It's like War and Peace. No one's ever actually read War and Peace, but it's on your coffee tables with people who think you're smart. This is that book.
That's so funny.
Like you flip through it.
I just talked to Nick, who I run the YouTube channel with today, and we were talking about that. And I was like, I own like a really nice edition of A Brief History of Time. And I was like, I got my ass destroyed by like the introduction. And I was just like, I'm not mentally prepared or smart. Because he was like, he was just like, yeah, I listen to podcasts and they're like, you'll love my book. Like, it's just kind of a casual jaunt through string theory. And he's like, oh, yeah, that's the access point. Just casually talking about string theory. It's just like, but that's why I was like, no one I know. Because I had people like, I love A Brief History in Time. And I'm like, that's a lie. You might have had someone read it to you on Audible, but I don't believe you really like.
This is 1,000% that show book. Now, you might crack it over once in a while, and there's like literally like the idea is that Dr. Manhattan is experiencing. Remember, in the comic books, Dr. Manhattan experiences past, present, and future all at once. So this is literally him trying to write a book while that's going on in his brain. So the book makes perfect sense to only Dr. Manhattan. It's published. It's a showpiece on your coffee table because you want to tell your friends you're very smart and read those kinds of things.
What if you could make it a little more accessible to the audience, right? You could call it Look Out Below, How to Not Teabag the Plebs. You know what I mean? Because then you get some really good cover art.
Right.
That Mrs. Robinson shot. And just like those giant blue Neptune-style testes. And then just like a mass of like, it's all of us normal.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
Or maybe we're carrying his testes like
I like
Atlas.
that. Hang on, I'm amending the title. A Brief History of Me, How to Not Teabag the Universe. That's good.
A Brief History of Me.
That's what I'm going with. A Brief History of Me, How to Not Teabag the Universe. This is good. We're workshopping this.
That's so you, Doc. That's so you.
That's classic.
Yeah.
Classic Manhattan.
A big fan. All right. My next one. What are we on? Number 3?
Number 3.
All right. I'm sticking with the X-Men, right? They actually are like awesome for self-help authors.
Oh, yeah.
But
absolutely.
My book was going to be called Up in It. by Charles Xavier, right? So the book's called Up in It. And then like the subtitle would be how to how to quiet the mind in a world of sensory overload and be present.
Oh, that's
Up
pretty
in
good
it,
though.
Right?
That's
Because I
very
was thinking
useful.
about this, right? I had to have this talk with my kids, right? Like, hey man, when grandma comes over to visit you, they normally are like excited for like 30 minutes. Like, look at all this new toy. I learned a new thing. You know what I mean? Shit like that. And then after like an hour, they're like, all right, we're just playing toys now with grandma. Let me watch something on your phone.
Right.
And everyone thinks the parents are bad nowadays, but no one is worse in the universe than really old people handing their phones to kids, right? Every time I turn around, my mom or my mother-in-law are like, here, kids. Or you just give them whatever they fucking want. And often it's the phone. And we talk to them about this. Like, when you are with grandma, right, when she makes the trip to come see you, shut it the fuck down and enjoy being in her presence and talk to her and experience, like, grandma time. And it's something that, this is parent. Like, you're not old enough yet. Henry's not there, but they'll start talking soon about how much screen time do you give them a day? What is this?
Right.
Are they allowed to use pads? Are they allowed to use phones? And I'm always just like, guys, this is the reality. Like, kindergarten on and preschool on, they're already using that shit, and it's never going to be less.
I mean, it's part of classrooms now. Our friend Jordan Kirchhoff on the show, he literally teaches a classroom with pads.
And they should. No one needs those fucking old-ass, out-of-date books. Like, this is the path, right? So, but it is something we fight with a lot. And I think we were just talking about this with Birds of Prey, right? In a world where there's so much shit to constantly absorb. Twitter. I run a YouTube channel for my job. So I have a fuckload of things I have to do on social media, and I hate it. I feel like it's ripping my soul out constantly, right? Because you're like, for every like one or two like really nice engagements, someone's like, we really like what you're doing, thanks. You're like, oh, that's great. There's also like, who's that fat piece of shit? And you're like, I've been here for 9 years, but thanks for finally noticing. I'm glad my girth is such that now you can see me, And then you're like, well, my day's ruined. Fuck me. But this is what I mean, right? Imagine kind of that, right? Now multiply it by 100. That's what Charles Xavier's dealing with. So his book is all about Up in It. How to shut the world off and blockade your mind for yourself, right? Spending time with yourself and whoever you're directly present with without cheating, right? Like, how does Charles Xavier focus on actually just hearing whoever's talking to him? And when I was thinking about this book, I was like, it's kind of the Charles Xavier story I'd like to hear. It's not, I've lost my powers, right? I don't want I've lost my powers and it's hard. I want him to be talking to someone, and then you have like, the little box is like, oh man, I know what they're about to say. But he has to like keep like a normal face, and that interaction with him of like trying to have normal conversations, even though he's hearing it all here, I'm sure. Right? Like, he can't always be blocking people out. He has to have become accustomed to cheating, as we know the character.
Right.
But I think there's an interesting bit for our modern world where Charles Xavier could be like, hey man, you guys are just getting there with all this extra technology. This has been my life since Woodstock. You know what I mean? Like, it's not always easy, right? And that was his life before people knew they were putting it in print. So it's even fucking worse.
Right.
So yeah, it's all about how do we find our quiet spaces, right? And really enjoy another human being in the real world setting. Up in it.
I actually think that'd be a wonderful comic book, to be honest with you. If I'm being honest.
You're welcome.
But again, great self-help. All right. I am taking the two most put upon spouses in the comic book universe.
Here we go.
And having them co-author a book about love languages. Sue Storm, the Invisible Woman, and Black Bolt's wife, Medusa, come together.
If you just did Medusa, right, you could call the book Just Me and My Hair, right? The Lady Gaga, you could have like a cross promotion. Just me and my hair.
Totally.
He's over there. He won't talk. However Gaga would write it. I'll let her handle the music.
The book is called The 5 Love Languages, from someone who loves someone who can't say a word without murdering someone.
Yeah, so it's
very
like,
lengthy
Sue's
title.
Like, my husband only talks in formula and neglect. And Medusa's like, jelly.
My husband literally kills people when he talks.
So jelly. I just had a weird thought. This might be wildly inappropriate. But can Black Bolt open his mouth, period? It's about vocalization, right?
It's about vocalization.
All right, so he can still, like, work with Medusa and meet her needs?
He can do stuff, yeah.
Like, he doesn't, like, the tongue falls out of his mouth and all of a sudden she's, like, a Jackson Pollock?
No.
Or a Sidney Pollock? Is it a Sidney Pollock? Whatever author does
Pollock.
those
Sidney
childish...
Pollock was a direct... Sidney Pollock was a film
yes,
director.
Right,
Jackson
okay,
Pollock's
yeah. Jackson Pollock does the childish art that people pay lots of money for.
Yes.
Right, okay.
No, he spent years learning to actually, like, control his vocal cords. So he can do all the things that he needs to service.
Imagine that, though, that the orgasmic reaction you must get to when he's like, yeah, girl. Like when he does like that ASMR or whatever in your ear, like, oh. It's just like, oh my God, his voice. That must be such a power move.
Well, my thing is, like, I'd be worried. What if he got way too into it? The moan would just
That's right.
Shatter your eardrums.
You can't help yourself.
So this is a two-hander. Sue Storm talks about how difficult it is to be with someone that intellectual. And when you have someone who's that intellectual, you have to teach yourself how to, A, get on his level, but also how to speak to him in a way that will bring him down to yours. It's about the give and take of a good relationship. Medusa's, though, is very different. Medusa has a few chapters where she describes how she communicates with Black Bolt, how that works, and how most importantly she doesn't get murdered doing it. Very important. But again, it's all about this book's mainly about
how are you going to do the interplay between Sue's chapters and Medusa's chapters?
It's all about communication. The interplay between the two, I think, mainly rests in the fact that Medusa and Sue Storm know the same guys. They can talk about their experience with those gentlemen as well. But ultimately, this is about communication.
Right.
The book is about communicating with your loved one on the level that they need to be communicated with, and then taking them to your level, which in a lot of cases could be a higher level, and in some cases a lower. But most importantly, it's about communicating with your loved one.
This reminds me of a book I actually do own and have read. It's called The Dude and the Zen Master, right? Or The Zen Master and the Dude, one way or the other. And it's essentially Jeff Bridges talking to, like, his Buddhist yogi master or whatever. Perfect. And they're just having, like, sit-downs, right? They're just two pals chatting it up about enlightenment and whatever. And it's just because it's Jeff Bridges, you're like, this is so charming and enlightening. Not enlightening in that sense, but, like, you're like, God, just to be fucking Jeff Bridges. Like, I don't want a vacation, right? I want 1 week where my mind just works like his, where I just so enjoy being alive and not being stressed out, right? That's the vacation I need. I don't need to go to, like, a Sandals, right? I need to go into the dude's mind, right? And so, but that's the whole thing. It's just them having these conversations about what it's like in their lives and how they try to, like, apply these principles. Maybe what you do with this is Sue and Medusa get together and they're like, all right, here's the pitch. It's a Sex in the City lunch. But we actually learn, right? Conversational brunch, right?
It could work, yeah. A little give and take back and forth. I could buy that.
Instead of like the book just being chapter after chapter of like, Samantha, another one, right? It's actually like a real chat about like, learning and being in a relationship.
Sure.
Or whatever, yeah.
Again, it's about communication, which all good relationships know. The good communication is the foundation of. I wasn't going anywhere with that. I was just of.
That's why we need the book, so we know how to communicate these things.
Truth. What do you got?
All right, number 4 for me is a weird one, and it's also, this is a journey into self book, right? So this is going to be like a Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants kind of ordeal. And I'm taking Concrete,
little memoirish?
right? Yeah. And so Concrete's is going to be called My Heart is a Furnace, right? And so Concrete, essentially, for those of you that don't know, right, it's this kind of indie comic book. A guy is abducted by aliens through surgery and whatever. He's placed in it's kind of like The Thing, right, but just solid concrete, not the, like, bulbousy rocks, right? So him and his mind are trapped inside of this alien body that has all these exceptional physical powers, and the inside of him is really super heated, right? Like, there's a scene where they get caught in a glacier in, like, Mount Everest, right? And he's able to just breathe and melt a lot of the ice and make water and shakes. He has this internal fire. But the funny thing about the book is he gets this, essentially the Thing's superpowers, but all he wants to do is be a travel journalist, right? He's always been obsessed with explorers and traveling, and he just never got there as a dude, right? And so with Concrete, he's like, maybe I can make enough money, right, and have people fund me, like going on adventures and shit.
Right.
And so I was like, what if Concrete, right? He's like, my soul burns hard, but my outside is so dead and concretey, right? He looks like those modern houses that rich people buy, and you're like, cool, every part of your house looks like the floor of my garage. Great use of money. You know what I mean?
Right.
Great use of money. Right? And he talks about, like, my rocky, like, dead exterior, but I have this fire burning in me. So what if he travels, and everywhere he travels, he learns a lesson about being human. And whoever he meets, it kind of teaches him the best lesson from their culture or wherever. They do a graffiti tag on him, right? Or put some kind of artwork from their culture. So passport stamps.
My little brother would love this.
Yeah, I know. Exotic Polly Dandino. He's getting a, Birds of Prey level hard on hearing this. Right? But essentially, yeah, Concrete goes to all these places, and whoever like teaches him his favorite lesson of humanity, they add artwork. So when he returns home, he now looks like a tagged up wall, right? He looks like he's been hanging out with Miles Morales, and he has all these markings and art that remind him of the lessons he learned traveling, and they give his dull, drab exterior this kind of outward vibrance that matches his inner furnace.
He is a tapestry of the world, an AIDS quilt of a person.
The least physically human man becomes this reminder of humanity to all of us.
I like that. That's very nice.
I think it could be good. I think it could be a good one.
Good. Absolutely.
All right, what do you got? We're closing in here.
For number 4, I have Captain America writing a book.
Okay.
Captain America's seen a lot, guys. Steve Rogers has been through more than most of us have in a lifetime. He had to go through World War II, and then he got woken up by a bunch of dicks who really ruined his day by making him become a soldier again. Now, that's neither here nor there. That's also one way to look at it.
If you could come out of your peaceful sleep and just get right back into the shit, that'd be ideal.
Right. So Steve Rogers has been through a lot. He's seen a lot of things. But the most important thing is Steve Rogers has always been in top physical condition post serum or whatever that shit was that he got. Post whatever, the post Vitamix.
Is this like a Jose Canseco confessional?
Not at all. This is not a memoir. What this is the 5 habits of the most successful people in the universe. Steve Rogers, chapter 1.
Right.
Steve Rogers, chapter 1. Literally, it's 3 pages long where he just describes what he eats during the day, how he works out. That's it. But then he goes and asks Tony, and Tony Stark describes his day. Tony Stark describes all the crazy things he's had to do to himself to actually continue to become peak physical condition, peak brain power of a person.
Here, okay, I love this. I love where you're heading, right? But I think your starting lens is off, right? So Captain America wakes up from the ice, and he's like, fuck all that Nazi punching, and the world still sucks. Like, imagine Captain America watching Charlottesville on the news, and he's just like, well, that was for nothing. I gave up everything for this, right? And then at the end of the day, he's like, what is Captain America truly but a man who didn't get the job done? Everything I am comes from a fucking needle, right? Like, I am just a steroid hound done well. You know, all of these things,
so
right?
much more depressing.
But that's what I mean. He wakes up, and he's like, fuck. I've been trying to be, and this is where Captain America is always fascinating. Him and Superman carry this burden of we mean so much more to so many, right? And he's like, I feel like a fucking fraud. I feel like an absolute fraud. And then he talks to all of his friends. He's like, this is what I do to try to be peak myself, right? But I'm feeling like maybe it's not me who's doing this. So what are your habits? And they compare notes, right? That could be real. Like, Peter Parker, how do you become this C- husband? Explain. Peter, you're so good at getting a C- in everything. Explain.
All right, so let's amend this. It's not the 5 most successful. It's not the 5 habits of the most successful people in the universe. What it is the 5 habits. The 5 habits of the most surviving people in the universe, like just getting by.
Here, no, I got.
Does that make more sense?
This is the whole thing. You call it shielding yourself from inner doubt. And that's what it is, right? So you have like him on the cover, like, hey, with his Captain America shield. And it's like, oh, when the darkness climbs in, it's like, Tony, you're your own worst villain, a warmonger who's caused incalculable damage to the Marvel Universe, an alcoholic, a generally bad guy, but thanks to Robert Downey Jr., you're completely reformed and we all love you again. Do you ever have that day where you feel like it's all a ruse? Explain. Right? Steve's like, me too. Me also. I also feel that.
This is great because this is the truest form of Steve Rogers, which is literally dismantling all the assholes he's had to put up with for decades.
Yeah, right?
Like he's just walking. He literally walks in a room. This is basically Steve Rogers as Mark Maron, setting a recorder down and just going, go.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm into this.
He's like,
like
I'll be
that.
in the corner
Cool.
attempting riffs. Okay, and Iron Man's like, well, I haven't had a drink in 6 months, but I am on the edge. Like, this is terrible, Steve. I hate you. But I think
that's
Captain
way better
America,
than the Five
right,
Most Famous. That's what people.
doing a book about the immense burden of being a symbol for everyone else as he sees all the things he holds dear to him is kind of these hollow, totems.
I think that's
that's
in line with
interesting
sort of
book.
your. But see, I think that's interesting because it's right in line with your sort of. It's kind of in line with Concrete. It's kind of in line with one of your other ones where it's about the burden you put on yourself as a hero. So you live your life,
Right.
but you have to live it in a meaningful way. You can't just live it. You can't live it. My number five kind of deals with this, but it's sort of like you can't burden yourself with the past in the same way that you would burden yourself with the future, so to speak.
Well, they had this great episode on the newest season of Doctor Who, right? And it's essentially this tale of two gods, right? And the theory being is that the immortals, because they live so long and they have so little that can excite them, right? That they have to play their games. And so they play this game where they each have their own planet that are kind of right by each other, right? Like Earth and Mars. And we're going to each have a society, and we're going to see how long it takes us to have that destroy our planet destroy your planet, right?
Right.
So they sow all these hostilities and fears and bad stuff. And eventually the people, like, after, like, entire existences of their species of depression and despair and violence, figure it out and imprison one of the guys, right? So, or one of the gods, right? So the other immortal was trying to catch the doctor, right, to, like, set this ruse. Spoiler alert, I guess I won't go too much more into that. But he has this great line. He essentially is playing kind of like nightmares, right? He's kind of this black shadow figure. He preys upon our weaknesses and insecurities. And he talks about, he's like, humans are spectacular creatures in that they have this one insanely interesting ability, right? And that ability is that he's like, no other creature that has ever existed has ever been able to show the amount of cruelty to themselves as humans. And he's like, it's our great ability is that our inner mind is so fucking cruel and destructive and horrible to ourselves that, he's like, that is their superpowers. They're these amazing engines of self-cruelty. And I was like, that's fucking fascinating because I think we can all relate to it. And it's literally the entire reason this whole industry exists is because, like, even if your parents like, man, he's having a bad day, if one page of this sparks like, oh, this will shift me just enough to not fucking be horrible to myself for a week. Right. You know what I mean? So I think totally. That's something that these books, like the really successful ones, probably capture. Is that these self-help authors are fucking lying sacks of shit if they also act like they're coming from a place of authority and don't need help.
True.
That's my theory on it.
What's your last? Give me your last.
All right. My book number 5 is Work is Hell, written by Hellboy. It's a classic. How do I survive the tediums of the job, right? A job that is beneath me, bosses that don't appreciate me and don't want to recognize my awards, right? 'Cause they don't want the public knowing they have an agent of hell. What do I do when I'm stuck behind all these fucking rubes at the BPRD when I know I can just grow the horns out and be the king of everything, right? How do I fit in as part of a team? I think people love classic, I think it's The Office, right? Everyone's like, oh, we're like The Office. No, you're not, right? You're all Stanleys. You think you're The Office, but you're really all Stanleys and Angela's, right?
Well, this is good because this is about... Yeah, this is good. This is about, again, having to deal with people who you feel that are beneath you in some way.
Yeah.
And how to actually grapple with that feeling.
Hellboy was sent to this, or summoned to this plane, essentially, to be a destructive force, right? To unleash and be these kind of kings of hell, right? So the idea of Hellboy, and it's what makes the character so unbelievably endearing, is that he is literally a Fred Flintstone, right? He's just a guy who wakes up and he's like, oh, God, again. He gets his fucking beer, brushes his teeth, gets his lunch pail, and he's like, all right, off to wherever to fucking fight whatever, right?
Right.
And it's just this great story of a guy who knows for a fact he's destined for more than his lot in life. But, like, you know, he keeps going through, and, like, the small bonds he forges with his coworkers, that's enough, right? And so he's kind of like, all right, well, I'll help save these monsters, but I'll destroy these other monsters. Meanwhile, my bosses look down at all of us like we should all be destroyed. Right. I think this is how to survive a job that you don't enjoy, which I would imagine.
It's pretty much all of us.
Yeah, I would imagine that 98% of adults, the vast majority of things they hate in their life and their depressions and miseries spur from the bad job, right? Whether it's not enough money, respect, it takes too much time, blah, blah, blah. That's probably where almost all of this shit starts, right? Like, you know, the root of all evil is money, but what waters that root is the bad job, right? Like, because not only am I not getting the money, or it's not worth the money, but now you're taking my fucking time, which is the most precious entity we all have. So I think looking at someone like Hellboy, right, who is able to just withstand this onslaught of the doldrums and the other dramas that workplaces offer, I think you could write a lot of interesting chapters in that book.
Yeah, I'd read that.
And honestly, just like a cover with like a guy in a cubicle, right? And it's surrounded by hellfire, right? It looks a little like bathroom placard stick figure guy. Work is hell, right? Like when you open the cover, it just goes into like a Black Sabbath.
Yeah, it's like one of those greeting cards that has music attached to it.
Yeah, everyone loves those. And when it starts,
everyone loves those.
And when it starts to run out of battery, it
totally
becomes super
fucking
creepy.
annoying.
Yeah, for sure. I think that actually would be the most massive hit on the list because it's so relatable.
I would agree with that 100%.
All right, what do you got? Last one.
My last one is a memoir. It is written by
the one person in the world. Are there self-help memoirs? Or is it like drug addicts, like I overcame this? That's self-help, right?
I think so. I mean, like if you read like something motivational, that's sort of self-help in a way.
I survived, you can survive too, sure.
This book is called Get Rich or Die with Great Responsibility by Spider-Man/Peter Parker. Now, a lot of this is based on. I've been reading Spider-Man Life Story, the Chip Zdarsky, Mark Bagley book, which is pretty cool. The concept, the conceit of the book, though, is like literally him through the decades. So Spider-Man is getting progressively older, and a lot of it has to do with like Parker Industries, which is a whole nother like sort of subplot within comics. So in this book, Peter Parker is a rich guy. Now, what really this book is about is a memoir, and it takes you through Peter Parker's life. But the core and the crux of the story to me, and this is something that I think I'm not ashamed to say it. I've been to therapy. Some people think that's like not a good thing, but I've gone to therapy for certain issues.
There's no shame in that. There's no fucking shame in that.
Right. So I've been to therapy, and like a lot of the times the things that people will tell you, particularly therapists, like to say is like you're living in the past, like you borrow trouble. Like I do that a lot. Like I'm what's called like a fatalist. I project bad things to happen. So putting it out there, like, yeah, right. Me? Who knew? But if you've read any Spider-Man book, his entirety of his world is hinged on a past trauma. And that's what motivates him to become super heroic in some way. But there has to be a moment, in my opinion, where there's a time where Spider-Man, Peter Parker has to let go of the past at some point.
Right.
Like the past has to no longer really drive you home. Now, not only is that like psychologically better, but also from a storytelling perspective, constantly going back to the well like that is horrible writing. But that's neither here nor there.
So your opening chapter is Peter sitting there having another hungry man, right? With eviction notices everywhere. Mary Jane's like, I'm out trying to find playboys because you suck and aren't providing. He's just like,
yep.
He thinks back on his Uncle Ben and he goes, that fucking communist, right? He's just like, with great responsibility, or great power and responsibility, comes the great depression of my profit margins.
No.
And he goes
the first
full
chapter
Norman
is
Osborn.
him. The first chapter is him shoveling that Hungry Man meal in his mouth and going, this is the moment I found myself thinking to myself, I have to let this go.
No. His opening line has to be, I found myself in a sticky situation.
Found myself in a sticky situation.
Hey, if you're speaking of bad writing, you have found the expert, my friend.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I was going to say, we should pun this thing up. I found myself in a sticky situation, a web of issues, if you will.
A web of lies, deceit, and fucking betrayals
by
Uncle
lies,
Ben's
deceit,
fucking hippie philosophy.
Betrayal by all. But the core of the issue
Peter's
is...
just like, you know who had the life? Bonesaw.
Bonesaw is ready. But no. Again, this book's mainly about... It's supposed to teach you how to not live in the past, how to live for the future. The future is bright. You want that Parker Industries. You want to live, and you want to have Mary Jane. You want to have the kids. You don't want to always have to be scraping by. And that's the whole point of the book. It's about looking into the future, reaching out your hand, flinging a web, and not missing.
Yeah, well, it's Peter Parker realizing that you also have a great responsibility to yourself.
Ooh, nice.
There
That's the jacket right there.
There you go. Yeah, there you go.
Peter
Parker is a fascinating guy, right? He's been through a lot.
He has.
And
He's been through a lot.
He has a great superhero lens of, I've done so many great things that you guys have seen flashed everywhere, but my life is just so garbage.
His life is still shit.
Yeah.
So
that's fascinating.
That in and of itself is very fascinating.
Him transitioning into Norman Osborn, but without hopefully as much evil. That's very interesting.
Hey, I'll read it.
Yeah, hell yeah.
If you could, it's about introspection and about not living in the past, which is something that I've been told in therapy I do.
I love that too. I actually had mandated therapy from the state in third grade, so I have no. Yeah, I was the class librarian, and I came back from recess, and some little bastard was just dumping the books on the floor and fucking up my library, and I allegedly. Because I was kind of I don't remember a lot of it, right? There's an early blackout for me.
You're in a fugue state.
Allegedly, I grabbed him by the shirt, and as he tried to flee, I stabbed him with my pencil. It didn't go, it's not like a fucking zombie movie. It kind of scraped him, but they're I remember getting dressed down by the principal, he could have had graphite poisoning. I'm like, he would have had years to live. That's not, and my mom's like, shut the fuck up. But yeah, But this is what they used to tell us in therapy. Oh, are you sad because your dad left? I was like, no, it's great not having a dad. Thanks. Where'd you get this fucking degree? The internet? The internet wasn't even a thing. But they always say that oh, man, does things that, bad things in the past, you have to let those go. I'm like, name me one fucking human being that's ever successfully done that. The answer's none, and that's why we need therapy and self-help.
The answer's none, not even in fiction. So I think Spider-Man letting go of the Uncle Ben thing would be a great thing.
Yeah. No, I think all of these books, though, because they come from a place of, look, these are the people we look up to and literally idolize as our new gods, and they have all the exact same fucking problems we do. I bet all of these would just sell 1 million copies. Is that a lot for books? Millions of copies.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know how much is millions. A shitload for a book. Millions.
I wish it said on this book how many copies have been sold, but it doesn't, unfortunately. Usually that's on these, billion copies sold. Sort of like hamburgers.
Self-help in McDonald's. Yeah, they love to advertise how many they've served. And comedians.
Very, very... That's it, boxers. Do you have a self-help book that you think a superhero would have written? Please tell us on one of our many socials, really 3. But nevertheless... I want to know what you guys think. We'll put up a poll as well. We hope you enjoyed the show. As always, catch us on everything. Make sure that you rate, review, subscribe to the show. Make sure you go to YouTube, look at our ugly faces and love the Nerd Alchemists.
Speak Tell us for what yourself, goddammit. I've got a nice Wednesday Addams look going on over here.
It's real weird.
Sexy.
The fact that your hair has not... My wife noted how amazing you look with your hair not cut, by the way.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. You have a real Daniel Day-Lewis and Last of the Mohicans thing going on.
I know. I just am finally like, I'm secure enough in myself, like, all right, it's time to unleash the Kraken of my sexuality all over the internet. You're welcome.
From the Long Box Sessions, I'm Alex Dandino.
And I'm Josh.